Suu Kyi ended up under house arrest for 15 out of the next 20 years. I followed her over the course of those years and just continued to admire her. So I looked for a way to go and interview her. If you made a list of people you always wanted to interview, she was at the top of my list. It took some doing, but I finally persuaded a diplomat to take me in with her incognito. And all I've got to say, if you ever want to get past a lot of soldiers with guns and camouflage, the trick is to wear pink. Now, Alan, this would not work for you. This would not work.
I look good in pink. I mean,
it worked for me. Had a wonderful interview with Aung San Suu Kyi. I'd been told her house was bugged and that the soldiers could come in at any time. So I had written my questions and honed them to 20 in descending order. When I told her I only had 20 questions, she said, "Oh, 20 questions, it sounds like a quiz show." She was quite charming. I expected her to be bright and charismatic, but not funny. Quite famously, when one of her colleagues finally got out of prison, who'd been arrested in '89, and made it his way to her house 5 or 6 years later, she opened the door to greet him and said, "Uncle, what took you so long?" She has a charming sense of humor, as do so many of the people there who have suffered so much, but they have kept this wonderful inner life that they have. We had a very thoughtful conversation. If I can paint a picture for you, at that time in 2003, you couldn't get a press visa. That's why I had to come in through the back door. All their top journalists were in prison. You could be arrested for interviewing an activist. You could be arrested for taking a photo of soldiers. You could be arrested for writing a poem critical of the military. You could be arrested for telling a joke critical of the military. You could be arrested for wearing white, which was considered a protest color. You couldn't even say Aung San Suu Kyi's name out loud, and that's how she got the nickname The Lady, because they spoke about her in code. At that time, there were 2,000 political prisoners, fierce fighting going on, rapes of thousands of women, which have been documented. And so we talked about all of these things and the economic ruin in the country. Burma was a failed socialist state, whereas once it had been the world's leading exporter of rice, it had become the world's leading exporter of heroin. It was later eclipsed only by Afghanistan. It had become really a Berlin with a bamboo curtain. It was a tropical Berlin, but a beautiful, beguiling, charming place. Someone described it as the Garden of Eden being run by the snakes. And there was a great deal of truth to that. But in a way, it was like the dark house on the block. Everybody knew bad things were going on there, but they didn't want to talk about it, and they didn't want to go, so they walked on the other side of the street, and they avoided the issue. After we finished our interview, as I was leaving her house, it's sometimes described as a villa, but it was about to fall down. I can say that it was seriously in need of roof repairs and paint and all manner of other things. But as I was leaving, being polite, I said, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" And she said, "Yes, show the light. Don't let people forget that we're here." And so I took that very much to heart. A few months, and been writing about Burma since then. A few months after I was there, she made an attempt to go back out. Again, she had intermittently been released and should go out. Once she was trapped in her car for 9 days by soldiers. Once she was trapped in her car for 11 days. Try to imagine that, trapped in her car for 11 days. But she was going back out again, gathering crowds of up to 30,000. And gaining popularity, and the ruling journals became alarmed that they were about to have another revolution, and so they sent out a squad of thugs, basically people turned out of the prisons, recruited from off the street, gave them liquor, some say drugs, and about sunset they attacked her convoy as it traveled from village to village. More than 200 of her supporters were beaten and clubbed to death with iron rods and bamboo sticks. As they attacked the convoy, some of them dressed as monks. Her student honor guard, she had these students who volunteered to go with her and protect her. The military had guns, she had students. They surrounded her car and linked arms to protect her from this howling mob, and said, "Auntie, Auntie, run, go, run." But she wouldn't go. She wanted to stay and kept calling out of the car for nonviolence, not to hurt each other. Her driver had the presence of mind to hit the accelerator and plow through and get her out of there. She got down the road and was apprehended by some soldiers and taken to insane prison, their worst prison in the prison gulag, and it's pretty bad. The worst one is appropriately named Insane Prison, pronounced insane but spelled I-N-S-E-I. And where she was held until there was an international outcry, and she was returned to her house again, but this time held completely, totally incommunicado. So as it turned out, since I'd been there just a few months before, I was one of the last people to interview her for 7 years. No one could get in to see her.